Welcome to the Sports Sesh podcast. I'm your host, Mason Shatwell, and my co-host is James Evans. And today we've got yet another guest on, Mr. Anthony Romero. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you doing, James?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Obviously, quarantine in the UK over here it's still starting to relax a little bit with the rules and the regulations. But obviously, I don't know if you've seen the recent news over in Manchester, but we've got to start wearing masks around shops and all that. And how's it over in America and Canada for you, Anthony?
In Canada, it's a little bit laid back. There's some cities where you have to wear a mask, and there's some cities that you don't. When I went to Vegas, I had to wear a mask the whole time. So it's just pretty much wherever you are. But other than that, things are starting to open up again. So.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Obviously, August 25th, Dana White Contender Series. How did it feel to get the call from the UFC to say, look, we want you on our show, and this is probably a big step in your career?
Yeah, I was so excited. I was so happy. I didn't believe it at first because I was like half awake and half asleep when my manager called me. He told me, and I ran downstairs. I hugged my parents and my brother and sister, and yeah, big smile on my face.
Well, with the UFC in Fight Island right now, you've got a little bit of time to prepare for August 25th. Has COVID-19 affected your training preparations at all?
Not really. It's pretty much the same thing. I have my little brother. He's a Golden Gloves boxer. So he's been holding pads for me. And that's pretty much all I'm able to do. Going for runs and all that. So I'm still preparing, still doing 5-minute rounds and all that. So yeah, everything's the same.
Well, over here, our gyms are still not open. They've been shut, I think, since the end of March, and I think they open in about a week's time. Are your gyms open now, or was they never shut?
The gyms are still closed. They're supposed to be opening, I believe, next week. But everyone has to go through certain steps to reopen, with the 6 feet rule and all that stuff. So they all have to get cleared first. But yeah, things are starting to open up next week.
Well, as we mentioned about you fighting on the Contender Series in August, the guy you're against is Mike Breeden. Do you know much about Mike? What do you think? What do you think you have in your game that is enough to beat Mike?
He's a great fighter. I haven't watched too much about him. My coaches usually do that. I think I watched him the first time I heard about him, and that was pretty much it. I've been working on my own. I believe I'm a well-rounded fighter compared to him. From what I've seen, he likes to stand up a lot, and I'm pretty good everywhere. So I'm pretty comfortable. Even if he wants to take it down to the ground, I'm comfortable off my back, and I believe that's where I will succeed because I'm comfortable anywhere the fight can go.
I was speaking to your manager over the last week. He said, and obviously you brought it up earlier on, you said you went to Vegas for like a fight shoot, was it? What were you doing over in Vegas?
Yeah, for the Contender Series, they do pictures and they do interviews and stuff for the commercial. And then also before your fight, like before you walk out, they do like the little intro and all that stuff. So I was there for about 2 days, but I was mostly in quarantine, and then I was up for like 3 hours and then back to my hotel room. So that's all the fun I got to have in Vegas.
How strict are they with the quarantine over in Vegas? Because I know in some places like they're really strict, and then in other places they're not relaxed, but they're less strict. How are they over in Vegas with it all?
Yeah. So as soon as me and my coach got there, they brought us to a room. We got tested, and then they said we weren't allowed to leave until we got the results back. But leaving was only to the Apex, and then we were only allowed to come back to the hotel room. We weren't allowed to go to the Vegas Strip or anything like that on our own. So we're just in the hotel, the UFC location, and then we went right back to the hotel. So I would say it's pretty strict. They had security and everything in the lobby, just keeping all the fighters safe, because a lot of the fighters arriving were going to Fight Island, so they didn't want anybody else getting sick or anything like that. So.
Did you bump into any big fighters on the way in Vegas, or?
I wish that would have been cool. I wasn't really outside of my room. Just in like the only time I went out is when I went to the Apex. But I saw on the UFC embedded that there was a lot of fighters there. Kamaru Usman was there, and Rose Namajunas, and all those great fighters. So, but unfortunately, I never got to see anyone.
And obviously at the Dana White Contender Series, it's predominantly held at the Apex. Well, obviously, once you went there and got to the Apex and had a feel of it, did it all just feel surreal that, you know, I'm finally here and in a month's time I'm fighting in this iconic venue?
Yeah, I believe I was more like that the first time I went. I went last year. I had a teammate, Aaron Jeffrey, compete on the show, and I went to go watch, which was nice to see how everything was, all the setup and everything. So I believe last year I was a little bit more like ooh and ah everywhere. But this year it was a little bit like normal, and it was nice to be back, and I knew where everything was. I knew where the bathroom was, and everything was normal. So yeah, it was good.
How long has the UFC been a dream for you?
I'd probably say around 14 years old. I started MMA around 11, 12, and then I started just constantly doing it. I was going every day. I was training with people who were competing in like amateur MMA and professional MMA, and I wanted to do it as well. And I saw the UFC had the top athletes, and I want to be a top athlete, a top professional athlete. So that's kind of around the time where I wanted to be a UFC fighter.
What got you into doing MMA in the first place? Because I know obviously it's not going to be everyone's first choice as a sport, because it's quite tough. But what got you started?
Yeah, so I started martial arts when I was around 5 years old. I started with Taekwondo. I did a little bit of karate for a couple of weeks and all that. But I would say it actually started when I started Taekwondo. I got my black belt around 11, and I just started to lose interest in it. It was just breaking boards and all that. It just became a routine. So I wanted to try something different, and I watched a UFC fight, Anderson Silva versus Patrick Cote, and I just fell in love with it. I saw that Anderson Silva was like an artist, and it was very creative, and I wanted to do something like that. And the exact same year, it's funny how it worked, an MMA gym opened up in my town, and I went there, and I started training, and I just kept going and going, and I competed with the national team for kickboxing. I went to Brazil, I went to Italy for the World Championships and the Pan American Championships, and I competed at the World Championships for Jiu-Jitsu, and I just kept getting higher and higher level of competition, and I saw that MMA was the best of the best, so that's what I wanted to do.
Obviously, you're on a crazy streak early on in your career. When you were training, like you said, at 11, 12, getting into MMA, at what age did you think, you know what, I could actually do this as a profession, I could go all the way?
Like I said, it was probably around 14. I was training, and I got into MMA when I was 18 because that's the legal age. So I guess the dream came true after my first fight. I was like, wow, I can do this. I actually went in there and did it. But I always said that I wanted to be in the UFC around 14, and but to actually start and for it to come true, I guess you could say 18 is when I started.
With going into the fight with Mike Breeden, obviously you're 7-0. Does being undefeated as a professional mixed martial artist give you that advantage going into the Contender Series at all?
No, I don't think it gives me an advantage. He's lost twice, and I know he's going to be a tough fight. Losing can give you experience from those fights, and I've lost before in my amateur career. I know the stakes weren't as high as an amateur, but I learned from it, and you can also win from, you can also learn from winning from your wins as well. I've had a couple fights where some minutes and some rounds didn't go my way, and I look back at it and I improve it, and I get better and better each fight. So yeah.
Briefly touched upon earlier. Oh no, go ahead, Mason.
Well, as you mentioned that you had one loss on your amateur career, how did it feel losing a fight and then avenging like a loss and coming back to fighting in the cage?
As an amateur, well, back then it was kind of hard because it was like, oh, my first loss and everything, blah blah But when I look back at it, it was like a blessing in disguise. I learned a lot from it, and that's when I started wrestling. And I met my wrestling coach, Chris Prickett, at Brock University, and we kept training together, and he's helped me ever since. And a lot of people say that I'm a wrestler in MMA, but I've honestly never done wrestling in high school, and I've actually recently had my first wrestling match in February or January, and yeah, I learned a lot from those moments, and yeah, it just makes me a better athlete overall.
You mentioned obviously earlier you've been at the Apex before, and I think at the top of my head you were offered a contract with the Contender Series, am I right? And obviously you couldn't compete due to various negotiations with the contract, with the promotion of Cage, with the champion King of the Cage. How did it feel back then to obviously not compete in the Contender Series?
Yeah, back then it hurt. It didn't feel the best because I had that opportunity and it just pulled away from me. But like I said earlier, there's always things that are blessings in disguise, and it helped me get more experience. It helped me watch what the whole show is about, actually being in there, the whole environment, just getting the experience. And I got 2 more fights since then. And now I'm a better fighter, and I learned a lot. And now I know what to expect for the show.
Well, I'm going to ask about your last fight. You had a 58-second knockout against Jacob Miller. How did it feel winning a fight in such quick fashion?
It was great. It felt awesome because I've been practicing that a lot with my coach, Lyndon. We've been going over that combination specifically for that fight. So we were doing it for a couple of weeks, and for it to pay off all that hard work, it was amazing. And it was funny, like, because that was supposed to be a 5-round fight, and training for it, like I was training with a new person every round and going the full 5 minutes full 5 rounds each sparring session. It's a lot on your body, and then all of a sudden just to do only a minute for the actual fight, it's kind of funny, but it was nice.
I recently read that you said in the previous interview that you said, "I understand what I signed up for, but I'm also a killer." What do you mean by that?
Like for me, I like to be humble. I know the way it sounds aggressive, and it sounds like I'm full of myself, but I have to be strong in my mind, right? And I can't say, oh yeah, these guys are killers. Like when I get there, what am I gonna do and all this stuff. They all started somewhere. One example I like to use is Dustin Poirier. He's a great fighter, and he started off and no one really knew who he was. He was just this kid from Louisiana, and he was doing all right here and there, and he had some losses and stuff. And now look, he's like number 2 in the world, and he's doing a great job. And I said, like, why? My question is, like, why can't I do that too? Like, what is different about me? I'm a human. He's a human. Like, they're not robots or monsters or anything like that. Like, I can do the exact same thing or even better. So that's what I mean by when I said that. So if they're a killer, why can't I be a killer?
With Breeden, obviously Mason mentioned earlier, he's on a 3-fight winning streak. How have you sort of prepared for a guy like Mike, and what sort of precautions have you made for a guy like Mike in terms of obviously next month with the Contender Series?
As for my opponent, I don't really game plan or anything for my opponent. There can always be an injury or something happening. We've seen in the last couple months with the whole COVID happening and fights slipping. So I'm just pretty much making myself a better athlete, faster strikes, better wrestling, just improving every day. And then usually maybe a 2 weeks before or something like that, I'll kind of break it down with my coaches. But as for now, I'm just getting better. I'm always in shape. Like even before I had this offer, I was doing my runs and cardio and all that. So I'm just pretty much developing my skills, and when the time comes, then I'll be ready to perform.
How are you feeling leading up to the fight? Do you have any nerves leading up to the Contender Series? Because I know some fighters get nervous before they fight, so it's interesting to see if you do get the nerves.
Yeah, I get nervous. Everyone gets nervous. Some people say they don't, but they're just hiding their feelings. It's just normal. We're going in there, like when you look at it, we're going in there to fight each other in front of everybody around the world. So it's nerve-wracking, but it's how you control your nerves. And I believe the strongest people admit their actual feelings. A lot of people like hide, saying they train 4 or 5 hours a day and blah 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 and all this stuff. And in reality, they're just training like me, and they're all training hard, but we're all human. And yeah, that's pretty much what to say about that.
During quarantine, you've said you've been practicing the pads with your brother, you've been going for runs, you've been obviously working on areas for the fight with Mike. What's your daily routine leading up to August the 25th? Is there a set training regime that you've got to stick to?
I'm pretty much doing the same schedule as I did before everything shut down. So I'm focusing on a day with wrestling, or focusing on another day with striking. A lot of shadow boxing, a lot of bag work. Watching a lot of the past UFCs. I've been watching a lot, breaking it down. Not just watching it once, but like 3-4 times the same fight in a day, and just picking things apart. Like one fight I've been watching a lot is the Holloway and Volkanovski fight. And it's so technical. Like you can hear the coaches now, especially there's no crowd or anything, and hearing how they respond to their coaches and picking off like what exactly the coaches are trying to call for. So there's a lot of things that people don't realize. A lot of people just watch the fights just to see people get hit, but there's a lot of technical stuff that goes behind the scenes. So,
and obviously with the UFC and the whole COVID situation right now, from the sounds of it, you're going to be fighting in an empty arena at the UFC Apex, and obviously, like you said, you can hear the coaches in the corners. Would you say you benefit from that next month?
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm gonna be able to hear my coaches, and that's the most important thing. To be able to hear my coaches. I've had fights where it was so loud I couldn't hear my coach at all, and I'm probably just working off reaction and my nerves, and just everything is just so high intensity. But I feel it's gonna be a little bit laid back, being able to hear the voice of my coaches. So it'd be nice.
I'll go back to you when you first started in your career. Something I'm always interested to ask MMA fighters is your first ever amateur fight. How did you feel not leading up to it, but how did you feel when you first stepped foot in the cage and you thought, right, I've got to fight this guy? How did you feel your first time fighting somebody?
I think preparing, I felt like I was excited. I was excited to actually do it. And then once I got in there, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually doing this. And I was like, I never thought like it would actually happen. So it was a kind of weird experience. I feel like there's a lot of pressure because at my gym, there's a lot of people saying, oh, this kid is good and blah, 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 and watch out for him. He's going to run over his opponent and stuff like that. So I felt like there's a lot of expectations on me. Now I don't care anymore whether you think I'm going to win or not. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm going to do my best. But that at that time, my first fight, I was like, oh, I really have to do something special. And I feel like that put too much pressure on me. But yeah, other than that, it was an exciting, good experience, and I learned a lot from it. Especially it was a split decision, so it was a close fight, and yeah, I learned a lot.
You made your mark in the King of the Cage promotion at 23. Is this the right time for you to be making the big step up to the UFC and the Contender Series? Is this the right time you feel in your career?
Yeah, I think this is the perfect time. I thought it was the perfect time before last year. But it's even better now. I got 2 more fights under my belt. There could have been an excuse last year if I would have got the contract. He could have said I needed more fights. It's been happening a couple times on the show. Or another thing is I would have been too young. So I've been hearing a lot of that in the Contender Series, that people have been winning, but they're not old enough or experienced enough. So I think I'm at that sweet spot, 23 years old. There's fighters in the UFC who are younger than me, with less fights than me, so I think it's perfect.
For a lot of fighters, they tend to, especially the ones for competing in the UFC, the big promotion, the big brand, the big name, it's a lot to take in. It takes a lot of hard work to get there. Have you ever had to make any sort of sacrifices to reach the pinnacle of the sport?
Oh, many sacrifices. sacrifices work. I could have a good job. I graduated at Brock University in recreation and leisure, and I could have a good paying job. I could probably have my own house now. There's a lot of things I can't even think of right now. Family time. There's been times where I had to miss birthdays, holidays, a lot of things that I've missed out on. But food is my favorite. I love food, and when I have to cut weight, it sucks seeing all the amazing food that's out there that I'm missing out on. But yeah, there's a lot of sacrifices, and if you want to reach the top of the sport, you need to sacrifice some things in your life. So
when you are on a weight cut leading up to a fight, how much do you usually have to cut in weight, and is it usually a tough weight cut?
For me, it's not that tough. I think I'm at that perfect number to cut weight. I walk around like maybe 175. 180 sometimes, and to cut the weight, it's not too bad for me. I know there's people in my division who probably cut more. I've heard some people walk around like 190, cutting to 155, which is crazy. But I'm at that perfect point, and I don't overdo it. That's the thing, is a lot of people overdo it in between fights, or some people say that I don't have a fight coming up, I'm just gonna do whatever I want. But for me, like, I'm happy that I was consistent with my my diet and my training, because this call came all of a sudden. Like, I was kind of expecting it, but I kind of wasn't. I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch, and it all paid off, and I'm ready to go. So.
From what I've seen, you like to mix it up, and obviously, as you said, you've got a lot of tools in your arsenal. What would you say is your best attribute?
My best attribute, I think using my brain in there. a lot. It works with my nickname, but a lot of people they'll just go and they'll throw. They'll just throw whatever and just try to get a knockout or something, and then they just fall apart, getting tired, and they just have no plan. I have a plan, and then a backup plan, and then a backup plan. And I'm a smart fighter when I'm in there, and I rarely get hurt. Knock on wood. The worst I've gotten is a cut under my eye, and that was it. But other than that, I'm pretty calculated when I'm in there.
You've already been to Vegas through that pre-fight shoot. Have you had the chance to speak to Dana White in the UFC yet, or is that still yet to come?
Still yet to come. I wanted to last year, but I didn't want to be that person like, oh my gosh, it's Dana White. Then he won't give me the contract at all. But yeah, hopefully I can see him this year, and we'll shake hands and we'll do some good business.
Should you win, obviously that'll give you the big contract with the UFC. What are your plans for the rest of the year in 2021?
I'm ready to fight again. Like, if they want to send me to Fight Island, or if they want to send me to the Apex, I'll stay another 2 weeks and fight. I'm ready to fight right away. This is something that I've been working for a long time, and why wait? I'm so young, and just we'll get it in there and we'll get it done.
Obviously, with the lightweight division, it's just so stacked with talent right now. If you do get the contract, who would you like as your first opponent?
Oh, that's a good question. There's a couple guys. I wouldn't mind fighting one of those guys. I can't remember their names. They fought. I think it was a Russian guy and a Brazilian. I can't remember exactly their names, but one of those guys would be cool. They're not bad. Like, they're in the UFC. I know a lot of people were questioning having those guys in the UFC, but they fought some good guys. I believe the one guy beat Kevin Lee early in his career and all that. So that'd be, I wouldn't mind fighting one of those guys. But there's a lot of great talent in the lightweight division, so I'm sure they won't have a hard time finding someone for me.
Obviously, Khabib, champion, 30-0. Should you obviously get a couple wins under your belt, and next year, you never know, 2022, if he's still around, why are you the man to take over the UFC lightweight division?
Oh man, I've been waiting for this for a long time. Whether it's Khabib or anyone, the attitude, like, I'm always smiling. They just need someone different. They don't need someone who's disrespectful. Not that Khabib is. Khabib's a great champion. But there's a lot of fighters that are disrespectful, not just on camera, but even in the gym. Like, just smile. Like, you're doing something that you love. Like, why is everyone gotta be so negative or mean or anything? Like, if there's someone you can help, then help them out. And I'm always looking to give back as well. I don't know if you guys saw, I'm doing a fundraiser for breast cancer. So I'm trying to raise money by selling shirts on my link and on Instagram. And I'm always trying to give back. Like, fighters like Dustin Poirier, I really appreciate. Like, he's giving back to his community. And Max Holloway, I saw he's doing some stuff too. So those are my favorite people to run the division. Those are the best champions who are giving back and making a difference. So I believe that I can do that as well, and that's why I believe I can run the town.
Well, I know since your last fight, well, not your last fight, your last loss, which is way back in the early days of your amateur career. I think it's a now 15-fight win streak. How's it feel being on a streak of that magnitude?
It's awesome. It's cool seeing that number. But I look at being 0-0 every fight. I'm always just starting, and all that stuff doesn't matter, right? Because anything can change with a blink of an eye, and I'm always going with no fights, and that's pretty much it. Always an 0-0 fighter.
Your nickname, the Genius, obviously with the mental aspect, that's such a big thing in the UFC. How important is it to go in with a strong mindset and obviously with, like you said, you feel like you're smart going into fights? How important is it to sort of control the mental aspect inside the octagon?
It's so important. I always keep to myself. I know a lot of people say that the mental game is talking to your opponent and trying to throw them off. But I don't really find a benefit in that. I feel like people who do that are a little bit more weak-minded, and they need to pump themselves up. And sometimes both fighters get into it because it makes money. But for me, I just keep to myself. This is just a normal fight. I'm going in there. Whether I win and don't get the contract, or I win and I do get the contract, it doesn't matter. The opportunity is priceless for me. I'm so excited to be performing on this platform, and yeah, that's pretty much all. So I'm pretty excited.
In terms of your fighting style, out of all the top high UFC athletes in the division across the roster right now, who would you compare yourself? Who are you most like in the UFC?
Good question. Most like in the UFC, I've heard people say that I have a style like Barboza, like the body type, and then I've also heard that Rafael dos Anjos, guys like that. I've heard that I have similar styles too, but I try not to emulate anybody.
No.
I try to just be my own person, and I pick and choose things. Like especially this last fight that I've been watching, I pick things and I try it, and if it doesn't work for me, then that's not for me, and I just move on. But I'm always trying to add new tools and become my own best self.
As you mentioned, the fight that you've been watching recently, Alex Volkanovski and Max Holloway, with the one that's just happened the weekend. I know it was quite a lot of people thought it was controversial. How did you score that one?
Yeah, I thought Holloway won. I was pretty disappointed. Yeah, I was pretty disappointed about that. But he did look a little bit different though. I thought he looked smaller. And I thought he looked a little bit more tired towards the end. But I noticed that throughout the whole card, there's a lot of fighters that were acting like that. But I think because of the time change, the heat, there's a lot of things going into the whole thing. People had to quarantine in their room. So there's a lot of aspects that could probably throw people off. But other than that, I still thought he won. So I was pretty disappointed.
With the majority, obviously, we've still got 3 or so events left on Fight Island. Which fight are you most looking forward to?
There was one, actually, the one tomorrow is going to be pretty exciting. Dan Ige is fighting against Calvin Kattar. That'd be a good one. Especially Calvin actually just fought against Jeremy Stevens. And then Danny Ige is he was someone that I thought was kind of at a weird bump in the road. He won his Contender Series fight. I don't know if you guys knew that by rear naked choke, and he still didn't get a contract, which I thought was weird. But then they called him back the fight after, something like that, to fight someone. But yeah, I'm excited for that one. And then I would have said Daniel Cormier and Stipe Miocic, but they're not on Fight Island. But that would have been good too.
Who have you got for that one?
I have Daniel Cormier for that one. I would hope, anyways. That'd be a great way to retire and call it. So.
What can we expect from you on August 25th?
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Expect the unexpected. A lot of people think I'm gonna do something and I do something else. People think I'm gonna take them down and then I knock them out. So it's pretty much expect a great show, not just from me but from him as well. We're gonna put on a great show and we're both trying to accomplish our goal and reach our dreams. So.
Well, something I'm usually interested in asking MMA fighters is, would you prefer a quick 30-second knockout or a 5-round war in a fight?
I'm good for both. For me, it's like the cardio's not an issue or anything like that. You can see on my record, I've gone the distance most of my fights, and then recently I've been finishing the fights. I like finishing the fights because it's different. I don't have to go through all that hard work to get the win, anyways. But yeah, I'm pretty good either way. Fighting for a minute is a pretty nice way to make some money though too.
With GSP being the great of Canada and obviously the face of mixed martial arts, would you sort of be willing to emulate his sort of record and success and be the new face of Canadian MMA?
Yeah, that will be hard to surpass because he's such a good athlete. But yeah, I would like to do something. I would like to do something better one day. But like I said, it'll be tough to surpass the greatness of GSP. But yeah, one day, even if it's not the same records or anything, I'd like to do something better in my own way. Like I said earlier, giving back to the community. And yeah, so one day.
What are you most looking forward to about fighting on the Contender Series at the Apex in Vegas?
I'm just looking forward to getting that contract. Whatever happens. I'm just excited for the opportunity. I'm pretty much gonna have to do the same thing. I'm gonna have to arrive at the hotel, quarantine, and then I don't know if I'm gonna be able to train at the PI because they wouldn't let me this time due to the whole COVID issue. But yeah, it's pretty much just excited to fight, and that's pretty much it. So.
Obviously, your parents sort of got you into taekwondo and the early sports earlier, like you said. What would your advice be to those wanting to succeed in the mixed martial arts sport?
I would say start off with one martial art. Don't go jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, and all this stuff. So I think it's super important to focus on a base, whether it's wrestling or straight jiu-jitsu or just boxing, and then branching off from there. I think that's super important, and then slowly getting into competitions for that specific sport. So if you do jiu-jitsu, just do jiu-jitsu competitions, just so you get the butterflies out of your stomach and those nerves and everything. But yeah, I'd say start off slow, especially if you're at a young age. There's no need to rush to get into MMA. You can do each martial art slowly, and then eventually, if you so choose to compete, then you can compete in MMA when you're 18.
Do you ever have any sort of superstitions going into a fight? I know it's a bit of a weird one, but a lot of fighters have it.
Superstitions? Not really. I'm pretty much focused. A lot of things have happened before fights and everything. But I'm pretty focused. One thing I do is I know not a lot of people are religious, but I do pray, and that's pretty much my thing before I get in there. But other than that, that's pretty much it.
Well, when growing up and watching the UFC, which out of all the main stars, which was the main fighter, which was one of your inspirations?
Yeah, so Anderson Silva, George St. Pierre was a big one because he was a Canadian fighter. Pretty much those guys were the biggest stars when I started watching. Michael Bisping was one of my favorites. I know he's on the
yeah, good man.
There, but yeah, he's one of my favorites. I actually like him commentating a lot too. He's pretty cool. But yeah, those guys are the legends.
If you win and get the contract, how will you celebrate the victory?
People have asked me before, like, what I do to celebrate. I pretty much, honestly, I go to my room. I say hi to people and everything, and I say thank you for coming to watch, and I pretty much just go back to my hotel room. I go to sleep, and I just treat the next day as normal. And even if I do lose, I do the same thing. That way, there's no emotions behind it, because a lot of people will lose a fight and then be like, no, I don't want to go celebrate with my friends and stuff like that. But I pretty much just do the same thing either way. So whether I win or lose, I'm going to my room, I'm going to sleep, and I'm going to enjoy the next day. And that's pretty much it. And even I'm in Vegas, so I won't be able to do anything anyway. So I'll be in my room, so it'd be like normal.
Out of all the fights you've had, because I know you've had quite a few, which, as you were saying earlier, like nerves and that, which has been the worst one in terms of nerves? Which one has you been the most nervous for?
Most nervous for? A good question. They're all pretty even. I haven't felt more nervous than others. It's pretty much the same feeling. So it's hard to pick. Yeah, they're all. I would say they're all the same. I get super nervous. But like I said, it's normal, and I understand how to control my nerves. A lot of people get super nervous and they freeze when they fight. They see the lights and they're like a deer when they see the headlights of a car. They just freeze. But I'm getting used to it, and like I said, it's going to be like normal on the 25th. So
if you are awarded the contract on the 25th of August, how long do you think it'll be till you're fighting in Vegas with your name on all the billboards?
It'll be soon. Like I said, my goal is to win the fight, and I'm just gonna be right there. If they miss out, then that's their loss, and it's gonna be a great performance. So it'll be too bad if the opportunity is missed. But I'll know I'll be there by the end of this year, early next year for sure. So.
Following you on social media, obviously, like you said earlier, you do a lot for the charity and all your local communities. Just talk about that sort of aspect, because obviously fighting does take a lot of your time as well as training, but to do charitable work outside of the ring and outside of the cage, it takes some doing, so fair play. So talk about the charity work and what sort of stuff you do.
Yeah, so I when I started martial arts, there was a time where my father lost his job, so he wasn't able to pay both the bills and pay for my membership training, as well as my mother, right? They both paid for a lot of things, and but like money was short. So in Canada we have this program called the Jumpstart program, and what it is, it helps kids attend their whatever soccer, martial arts, whatever they're joining, and it helps them pay for their membership. So they helped me when I was younger, and I don't know if I would actually be here because I probably would have had a break, and maybe I would have stopped and done something else or what. So I really appreciate their help, and to see that they've been giving me so much. I want to give back to the community that I live in. Also, like I said, I'm raising money for those shirts. I've had some family members who've had breast cancer, and I just want to give back just because they've helped me in my career, supported me as well. And there's a lot of people, a lot of families who have to go through that. So I want to give back to that as well. So I'm just a happy person. It makes me feel good giving back to other people. So.
with obviously the UFC, you've spoken about the greats of Anderson Silva, George St. Pierre. You've grown up admiring these fighters. What's, out of all their fights, or just in general in the UFC, what's the best fight you've ever witnessed growing up?
I think the best fight that I've seen so far is Israel Adesanya and Kelvin Gastelum. I really, really enjoy that fight because it was back and forth. Both fighters had to go through adversity, and especially like Israel Adesanya, like not a lot of people have dropped him in a fight or hurt him, and to see that he has the ability to come back from adversity, it was pretty cool to watch that, and it makes him an even better champion.
And obviously with the UFC, it's predominantly American fighter base. You've got a lot of Americans on your roster, a couple across Europe and Canada, etc. Would you, if you do when you get the contract, would you describe yourself as the next big thing in the UFC?
Yeah, I would say that. I have a lot to offer for the UFC. We need more Canadian fighters. Nothing against any other country or anything. We just need more Canadian fighters. There's a lot of fighters from the United States, a lot of European fighters, and I believe it's time for Canada to get some greats in there and represent the country and show how great our martial arts is. So.
And obviously, August 25th, next month, does this sort of time period, obviously with July 5th, 14th, does it sort of has it kicked in at all yet? Obviously, you're fighting next month, you're fighting at the UFC Apex. Are you starting to sort of, as quote says, get the butterflies in your stomach and all that?
Yeah, I think about it every day, but in a good way. I visualize it. I visualize me flying there. I visualize every step of the way, and that's what I've always done. And when I visualize things, it makes things a little bit easier to comprehend. I visualize me finishing the last guy in the fight, and it happened. So it's just a mental part of the game that a lot of people need to work on, and that's something that I'm pretty good at. So I think about it every day, and sometimes more than others, and sometimes maybe I'm not able to sleep and stuff, but it's happy thoughts, and I think about it, and yeah, I'm super excited for the opportunity.
Can we get a prediction?
Yeah, I'd say second, maybe third round submission. First round's gonna be there's a lot of nerves, right? So first round we're just probably gonna feel each other out, and if not, it's gonna be a hard first round. But yeah, I'd say second, third round submission.
Has your coaches sort of given you any tips and advice just to sort of mentally prepare yourself for this big stage and for your big moment in the UFC Apex on Contender Series?
Pretty much just treat it like another fight. Preparation's the same as other fights. I don't need to do more than I've been doing. A lot of people think they have to do more because their nerves are killing them, and they feel like they need to train 4 or 5 hours a day every day. But I'm just training like normal. Do my 2 sessions a day. Sometimes I'll do 1, make sure my body's intact. I'm not overdoing my training sessions. If my shoulder's hurting, I'm not throwing a bunch of punches, or I'm not grappling super hard. Same thing if I had any other injury. And I'm just being smart with my approach.
Obviously, August 25th, Mike Breeden. I'm obviously we're all going to back you and we're all going to root for you. Do you feel like now, obviously as you said earlier, this is sort of the right time for the UFC? Do you feel for Mike Breeden that he's got to come across a great guy in Anthony Romero because you're undefeated and you're so determined to win? And do you feel for the bloke?
It sucks, but it's part of the game. We have to do our job. We have to punch each other, and someone has to fall and someone will rise. And it's gonna be a great fight. I don't know if they do a fight of the night thing for that, but it will be fight of the night because we're both great fighters, and we're gonna put on a great performance. Yeah. So.
Well, out of all the fights that you have had, which one do you think you've learned the most from?
Learned the most from. I'd probably say my sixth fight. I think it was the fight before. That was my last fight on my contract for King of the Cage, and there was nerves and everything, and he actually caught me in a submission in the second round or something like that, and I just fought my way out of it, and I learned a lot from it, and I when I went back to the gym after that, I started catching people in that submission, and it was funny to see how that works because I've never seen that before. And I watched the video over and again. I watched how he caught me in it, and never again. That's never gonna happen again for sure. So yeah, I learned a lot, and I've been catching a lot of people with it. So,
would you say that would you say that would be the one where you've learned the most from? Yeah.
Yeah, I believe so. Like I said earlier, you don't always have to lose to learn. You can win and learn from the minutes in your fight, from the rounds in your fight. Learning, reminding yourself how you feel in between rounds. You can learn a lot from every opportunity.
With the King of the Cage promotion, how much would you say you benefited from your career fighting under that promotion?
It was nice. It was 20 minutes from my house. I just drove across the border, and it was nice. I cut weight in my backyard. I had a hot tub, and I just sat there, and that was pretty much it. The hotel was nice. It was at a casino. They helped my family a lot. Like my family went in to watch, no problem. I had a lot of people. They were able to come watch across the border. So it was a good experience. The only thing I had was not being able to go on the Contender Series, but other than that, it was a great experience and I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, perfect. You pretty much answered all of my questions there. I don't know if you've got any more, Mason.
No, I was just about to say that I think we've covered quite a bit. So, as always, everyone, we've got the Facebook page and all of our Twitters will be on the description. So, check them out and obviously look at Anthony's charity work as well. So, cheers again for joining us, Anthony.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you guys having me.
Take care, mate. Go smash it on the 25th, mate.
We'll be back. We'll be back here from England.
Perfect.
Cheers, mate.
Yeah.
Take care, mate.